Rex Tillerson is the Secretary of State, at least for now, but it looks like there's a movement afoot to get him out. Now, if you remember, he, of course, was the CEO of ExxonMobil. Why was he even Secretary of State in the first place? Well, Donald Trump and the Russians have some sort of friendship, let's put it that way. And the Russians' #1 priority from the US government was to lift the sanctions so that they can complete a $500 billion deal with ExxonMobil. So now that's going to play into the story a little bit later, but they have not been able to lift those sanctions. Senate and the House voted to maintain them and in fact add new sanctions. And the vote was so overwhelming, 98-2, that Trump was forced to sign it because they could override his veto. By the way, he still has not actually implemented those sanctions, as usual, completely outside of the law for Donald Trump. But then the drama began when Rex Tillerson apparently called in a private meeting the president an effing moron. And then the president was unhappy with that when that news story broke. He claimed that it was fake, but you could tell that he knew that it was real, because among the different crazy things that he did was challenging his own Secretary of State to an IQ test. Yeah, that's when you know someone's really smart, when they publicly challenge others to IQ tests, including people on their own team. So now the New York Times with at this point, I suppose, an unsurprising story that the Trump team is beginning to push Rex Tillerson out. So let me give you the details. The White House has developed a plan to force out Secretary of State Tillerson, whose relationship with President Trump has been strained, and replace him with Mike Pompeo, the CIA director, perhaps within the next several weeks, senior administration officials said on Thursday. When Trump was asked about this, he gave this awesome non-answer. He's here, Rex is here. Well, I suppose so, almost by definition. But if you have ever seen a non-committal answer, that is it. In other words, na 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 na. Okay, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the White House spokesperson, press secretary, said, when asked about this, there are no personnel announcements at this time. Na 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 na. It was a brief romance. In fact, I'm going to get to how brief it is in a second. And New York Times explains public disclosure of Mr. Kelly's transition plan may have been meant as a signal to the secretary that it is time to go. I'm pretty sure that's exactly what the point of that leak was. Yes, absolutely. Now, turning to Mr. Tillerson's reaction, Mr. Tillerson's departure has been widely anticipated for months, as the Times explains, but associates have said that he was intent on finishing out the year, I love this part, to retain whatever dignity he could. Even so, an end of the year exit would make his time in office the shortest of any Secretary of State whose tenure was not ended by a change in presidents in nearly 120 years. Now, given Trump's track record, it's more about Trump than it is about Tillerson. As I've said many times, I believe that he still thinks that he's on The Apprentice and has to fire a person a week. He has fired more people than you could possibly imagine. Any one of these fires might have been a giant scandal under the Obama administration, but under Trump, we have gotten quite used to them. But here's an interesting twist. In March, Tillerson had admitted that he, quote, didn't want this job. So that goes to my theory about the Russian sanctions. The only reason Tillerson took the job is because he wanted to lift those sanctions to help his good friends at ExxonMobil. He was not only the CEO, he was there for 41 years, obviously had a ton of stock options along the way, et cetera, and owed a lot of allegiance to that company. It's a $500 billion deal with Russia that Exxon had, but the revenue from that deal could be as high as $9 trillion. Now, in March, you began to get notes from the Senate and the House that they were going to make sure that the sanctions could not be lifted. And all of a sudden, Tillerson's like, wait, what am I doing here? Now, remember, March is only a couple months into the term, and at that point, Tillerson's already like, oh, this turned out to be useless. So frustrations on both sides, and rooted in what I believe is the core corruption of both parties. I mean, there's a reason why Trump put Tillerson in, and there's a reason why Tillerson accepted, and it has nothing to do with the fact that he had any experience in diplomacy, because he didn't. He had zero experience. It had everything to do with the fact that he was the CEO of ExxonMobil. Okay, And the Times further explains that Mr. Tillerson has often been on a different page than Mr. Trump, and he has spent much of his time reorganizing the State Department, slashing its budget, and pushing out more than 2,000 career diplomats. So I don't want you to get things twisted here. A lot of you, if you're Americans, or even more so if you're from anywhere else in the world, can't stand Trump. But that doesn't mean that the people that are opposed to Trump are necessarily good guys, especially within his own administration. No, Tillerson, I think, came in for corruption and then nearly pulverized the State Department. So I shed no tear for Tillerson leaving. I think he was a bad guy. I think he came in with bad intent and had very bad actions within the State Department. Now, just because Trump is worse doesn't make Tillerson a good guy. Now, how about the guy replacing him, Mike Pompeo? That is who they believe will come in. He is currently the CIA director. Why does Trump want him? Because number one, Pompeo kisses his ass, and quite feverishly at that. That is the number one qualifying attribute that Donald Trump looks for, and it is explained in every article on this issue that they're like, oh, Trump likes the fact that Pompeo is pro-Trump, won't question Trump. So Pompeo, to some degree, politicized the CIA. To be fair to him, he also did point out that yes, the Russians did interfere in the 2016 elections, but in every other way supported Trump lockstep. So Trump is looking forward to him doing that at State Department. Now, the second reason to support Pompeo is because the alt-right loves him. So you remember Sebastian Gorka, the guy who was so unhinged that Trump loved him on TV, but his chief of staff, John Kelly, had to remove him from the White House because he was such a lunatic. Well, in October, Sebastian Gorka, former advisor to President Donald Trump, told Breitbart Pompeo is, quote, fully on board, very loyal to the president. That's page 11 there at HuffPost reporting that. And of course, the president loves that. And Gorka's a complete alt-right character, so the fact that he likes Pompeo is a very bad sign. And in fact, he went on to say, having someone like Pompeo come into the State Department would be great news. And if it's great news to the alt-right and Sebastian Gorka, it is probably terrible news for the country. So from bad to worse. That is the usual state of affairs for the Trump administration. What you just watched was one of the videos that we do today, but we actually do a whole 2-hour show every single day. It's a podcast. You could watch it in video or listen to it as audio. You can download it, you can stream it, and you get it completely ad-free if you could become a member of the Young Turks. tytnetwork.com/join.